In today's video, we're going to be taking a look at some NHL trade and free agent rumors of things we might see happen once the offseason becomes official. We're looking at teams like the Edmonton Oilers, the Pittsburgh Penguins, the Vancouver Canucks, the Arizona Coyotes, and more. We'll get into all the latest coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. Now, as I mentioned, we have some trade and free agent rumors of things we might see happen this summer that I want to discuss today. And of course, a lot of this could be fueled by what happens to the salary cap. With everything going on in the world and the season being suspended, the markets are very volatile. The NHL teams and the league are obviously losing a lot of money by not being able to have their games played. If they're not able to have a playoff season, which is, certainly, skeptical at best at this point, and even if they do, they may not be able to have it with fans in attendance. They're really going to hurt the bottom line when it comes to the salary cap and NHL team revenue, etc. And we may not get that salary cap increase after all that we were projecting not that long ago before all of this started to go down. It is even remotely possible that the salary cap could actually decrease, although I would think that the Players Association and the league would work together to try to mitigate that if at all possible, because obviously, teams are up against it now. If we see a decrease, that's really going to hurt going forward, but it is a remote possibility. So most of these rumors are stemming from things that we may have to see happen based on that, and of course in conjunction with the season being suspended. Let's kick things off with the Edmonton Oilers. Now, the Oilers were a team that were very active at the NHL trade deadline. Even though some of their moves didn't seem to be, super significant, there were still a lot of minor deals and players that they probably would have liked to have more of an assessment period with to determine if they want to bring back next season and beyond. They had acquired some pending UFAs like Mike Green and Tyler Ennis, and clearly, they did okay. Green ended up getting hurt shortly after he arrived. Ennis seemed to be a decent fit, but they didn't really get a lot of time to audition with that team, and that might be, some question marks leading into the offseason for the Oilers. Obviously, the newly acquired Andreas Athanasiou was an RFA, so they don't have to worry about whether or not they want to bring him back. Clearly, he's somebody who should fit into the mix longer term. But, at this point, he didn't get a lot of chance to play either. But the Oilers, like many teams, likely will have to cut some payroll in order to address other areas of the team that they need to do here during the offseason. And one potential player who may not be returned would be goalie Mike Smith. Now, he was having a decent year with the Oilers, but when you look at the contract of Mikko Koskinen, in fact, he's got more term and a decent salary on there. That might prevent them from being able to bring Smith back. I mean, he did have an okay year. It's not that he performed poorly or anything like that. It's not really clear either if Smith's going to want to continue playing, because obviously he is, a senior member of the NHL getting up there. But, all indications, I would, I'd be a little surprised if he wanted to retire. But you never know. Things can change over the course of this that we're experiencing now. But either way, the Oilers have some tough decisions. There was a lot of rumors they were going to really try to bring in another significant player during the offseason. I really don't see them being involved in the Taylor Hall sweepstakes. I think that's going to be too much money and doesn't make sense for them right now. But they do have some other areas of the team that might be tough in order for them to address. If they don't get a cap increase and they have all these players that they need to decide on what to do, Ken Holland's going to have his hands full, and it's really tough to say what direction the Oilers head in. Now, there are some questions regarding the Dallas Stars with Stars reporter Matthew DeFranks, who recently had a mailbag type column taking questions from fans. And one of the questions he answered, which I thought was an interesting concept, is should the Dallas Stars entertain trading forward Alexander Radulov in order to address their depth at center and maybe aim to acquire like a number 2 center iceman? Now, DeFranks went on to suggest that the Stars very well could look to cut some salary. Like a lot of these teams, they're up against it with the cap. They don't have a lot of wiggle room, and certainly it might make sense for them to try to move a contract out similar to that, but at the same time, Alexander Radulov might be tough to move. Now, he does have a no trade clause, but once the offseason officially kicks in July, that moves to a modified no trade, so they have more options of teams they could trade him to. However, there are some drawbacks that teams may not want to look to acquire him. He's 34 years old for starters. He still has a couple years left with a cap hit of 6.25, and he's coming off his career low season that he just finished with Dallas, which is not really a prime time to be making an acquisition. Radulov still showed at times this year that he could be an explosive offensive player and was kind of streaky, but I just don't see there being a whole lot of interest in a contract like that, especially, like I said, because of the cap and the lack of increases that we very well will see now. That's not going to make things easy. So more more likely Radulov does stay. I also think the possibility that Roope Hintz very well could be their number 2 center longer term. I think he can make enough improvements and continue to evolve in his young career that they might have the answer to that internally. He's had flashes before where he's looked pretty good in that role, and I do think that's a strong possibility that Hintz could be their answer. But at the same time, like I said, with the Stars, because of the salary cap and everything going on, I do see that possible the Stars could look to cut salary. I think maybe other players like a Cogliano or a Como or something like that would be more likely. I can't see them moving big-time players like Seguin or Ben, but you never know, although that would really hurt them as well. They got their goaltenders, Ben Bishop and Anton Hudobin, are both 33 years old. Hudobin is a pending UFA as well, so depending on what his price tag is, debatable if he returns. So they do have some question marks in Dallas, but I don't see trading Radulov as the answer. I can see there being interest on Dallas' side. I just don't see there being interest elsewhere to make it happen. But let me know what you think. Should the Dallas Stars try to cut some payroll this summer? And if they do, what is the best way for them to go about it if we don't get the salary cap increase that we're all expecting? There's a lot of talk as well. The Pittsburgh Penguin defenseman Justin Schultz may be done with the Penguins once the season is complete. If they do not return, he very well may have ended up playing his final game as a Penguin. Now, Schultz over the last couple of years has battled a lot of injuries. He's a pending unrestricted free agent. He's going to be 30 years old this summer, and he's really not having a great time for him to be having a struggling year offensively when he's going to be looking for a new contract heading into next year as well. He only put up 12 points in 46 games this year, and he was limited to only 29 games last year. So clearly, like I said, the last couple of years have been a struggle for him. He certainly had his moments of being a solid offensive defenseman still, but still the last couple of years have been quite a struggle for him. Seeing other younger defensemen like Marino really evolve into the picture here certainly makes Justin Schultz expendable, so it is pretty unlikely that he return to the Pittsburgh Penguins. Hard to say where he will go, but the fact that he's a right shot, experienced defenseman who can put up some points, I'm sure he won't have a hard time getting a contract. As long as he has no issues with his health, I'm sure somebody will sign him to at least a short-term deal, but the value in Justin Schultz has certainly dropped a fair bit here over the last year or so. It's debatable. Maybe the Penguins should have traded him a little bit sooner when the opportunity was there, when there's a little bit more value and more demand for services like him. They could have gotten a decent return. Instead, they're likely to lose him as a free agent, but at least they have some younger defensemen in the system, as I mentioned, to kind of pick up the slack where he's left off here. But certainly interesting to see where Justin Schultz may very well end up. I don't expect there to be a lack of interest, but I certainly don't expect him to get a long-term contract. Now, next up here, let's take a look at the Vancouver Canucks. Now, after goaltender Jacob Markstrom went down with injury, they were really exposed in goal and proven that they really were more reliant on him than they may have wanted to admit prior to the injury. Goaltender Thatcher Demko did okay, but not overly great, and also proved that he's not ready to be a full-time NHL starter. He could certainly use some more time as a backup, and you can't help but wonder, what that means for him and the potential for the future to be a starter. The only problem is the Canucks, like these other teams we've talked about, are going to be up hard against the salary cap if they don't get an increase. Like I said, and it's unlikely going to happen at this point. They're going to have to pony up probably around $7 million to keep Markstrom in the fold, and I'm guessing he's going to want probably a 3 or 4 year contract in some form of a no trade clause for at least a couple of years to prevent him from getting grabbed in the Seattle expansion draft that'll be coming up in the relatively near future here as well, and that's going to prove difficult for Vancouver to accomplish. They've also got some other players that need new deals as well. That's players like Jake Virtanen, Troy Stetcher, Adam Gaudette, and pending unrestricted free agent Chris Tanev can be added to that list as well. It's debatable if they all return. Right now, they likely wouldn't have enough room to make all those contracts happen. So the Canucks, even though they had a really good year and really surged into a battle for a playoff spot this year, it's certainly up for debate what they need to do during the offseason. But one thing that would really help go a long way in helping them keep Jacob Markstrom with some of their other pieces would be to finally move the contract of veteran forward Louis Eriksson, who clearly has not worked out for the last number of years. There's certainly some changes coming. Once his bonus is paid July the 1st, it's going to make his contract a lot cheaper for any acquiring team. They'd have to deal his cap hit for a couple of years, but there wouldn't be a whole lot of cash going out the door. So if they're willing to add some type of sweetener to the deal, I'm sure they can find another team to hopefully take that off their hands. hands, which will certainly create a lot more flexibility for the team to keep their starting netminder, which is, obviously gravely important for them here moving forward. They have another goaltender in the system, Michael DiPietro, who's shown a lot of promise in junior, but clearly they don't have an heir apparent to Markstrom ready to take over here just yet. And if they lose him to free agency, they might find themselves in tough to maybe take some steps back before they can take steps forward here yet again. But can they move Eriksson? Depends on what else they're willing to add to a sweetener with it. But there will be teams out there, as always, with salary cap room who could take advantage of the situation, get a high draft pick or another top prospect or something added into the mix to get him off the Canucks books. But that's going to be absolutely paramount now, with the salary cap increases likely not coming. Lastly here, I want to touch on the Arizona Coyotes and their need for offense. They really need to find a number one center. This team has struggled to score on a consistent basis, and even over the past year, we've seen them add veteran forwards like Phil Kessel and Taylor Hall, who have a very solid offensive past and resume to add to their mix here. It's not working out at all. Phil Kessel's numbers have tanked. Taylor Hall has not been the offensive threat he used to be there either, and you just can't help but wonder what they're going to do next. I mean, they've spent a lot of assets to acquire Hall, and obviously when the NHL season was paused and suspended, they were out of a playoff spot. So it could be all for naught. And they could end up losing Hall as a free agent this summer. It's no quite clear exactly what his plans are going to be, but I can't imagine, due to the lack of success and the fact that they were not really even in a playoff spot when the season was paused, that he would be highly likely to sign there. At least I wouldn't think so. His big thing that he's made known here over the last little while regarding his free agency is that he really wants to be on a contending team, a team that can make the playoffs on a consistent basis, where he can actually play some meaningful hockey games in the Stanley Cup playoffs, which is something he really hasn't had much of a chance to do yet over his NHL career. He's had limited playoff time, even though he was the first overall pick, and for the most part has been a pretty solid offensive forward during his career. He won the Hart Trophy not long ago. He had some injuries, though, which has slowed him down a little bit, but things just have not worked out in Arizona, and I can't help but wonder if they're going to end up losing him, even though they gave up a lot to acquire him this summer. But for them to get a number one center iceman, I'm not really sure what they would trade to make that happen. Clearly, they have young Barrett Hayton, who has a lot of potential as well, but he's not ready to be a number one center. You don't want to put too much on him too quickly. So they need to ease him in slowly, let their younger kids have smaller roles, let the veterans kind of take over. But right now, those veteran players just are not getting the job done on an offensive basis. And based on what else they have on their roster and what else they have in their pipeline here, I just don't see what they could do in order to make a number one center acquisition. They're up against the cap now with all the players they have on the books. They do have a few promising prospects, but nothing too crazy that would be really worth moving. So I'm really not sure what the Coyotes do here. Obviously, they've tried their best to add star power. They've tried their best to add some offensive punch, and it's just not working out. So they might have to make some other moves here, whether it be behind the bench or something. Although I know many regard Rick Tocchet as a solid coach, you can't help but wonder why things are just not progressing the way that many thought they would. Now, of course, hanging over the Coyotes' heads as well is that investigation into their testing of junior age hockey players, which is still not really confirmed, or what the penalties are going to be, or what the investigation outcome is from the NHL. It's not quite clear at this point when we're going to hear anything further about that. I mean, right now the season's suspended. Not really sure if the league is continuing that investigation or if they're going to wait until they resume to really tell us anything. I really don't know the status of that, but they could be punished between financial ways or draft pick ways or anything else as well. So this team might really find it to be in tough over the offseason to really make any progress and take some step forward here next year. Now, one other thing to add as well, young prospect K'Andre Miller, defenseman for the New York Rangers, has signed his entry-level contract. There's been rumors about that over the past week or so. They finally did make it official here in the past day or so that he has signed that deal, which is effective for next season. Of course, K'Andre Miller, now the second player to leave Wisconsin out of the big three that were there. Alex Turcotte recently signed with the Kings, and of course their teammate Cole Caulfield of Montreal will be the next one to keep your eye on, whether or not he decides to return to college next year, signs a pro contract to play with Montreal or their AHL affiliate, or he also has the option to leave college and go play a season in the OHL, Ontario Hockey League as well. So I guess we'll have to wait for further updates on that. There was some reports of him meeting with Marc Bergevin, the Montreal Canadiens, so we'll see when that happens. I don't know if things have been delayed or put on hold with everything going on or what the status of that is, but he will be the next interesting college player that we await for some updates on. So that is all your news updates for today. Of course, as always, I want to know your thoughts and opinions and everything discussed, so make sure you leave lots of comments and we can continue the conversation. If you're new to the channel, consider subscribing and turning on your notifications so you don't miss any future content. And even though we don't have anything active in the NHL going on, there's still lots to talk about, and you can come to Top Shelf Hockey for all your hockey needs. Thank you for watching, and I will catch you next time.